everybody. It is Friday, January 24th, 2025. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. On this January 24th, National Peanut Butter Day and National Compliment Day. Jill?
Moshe, did I mention how intelligent you are and how much I love working with you every day?
Jill, right back at you. Appreciate how personable, how thoughtful you are on this National Compliment Day.
What do you mean? I was just saying it.
Well, Jill, we probably need to take more of a moment here to, show gratitude for one another. It's an important thing. It's something all of us should do. But what better reason to do it than National Compliment Day? I was actually going to combine the 2 days and, talk about my love of peanut butter and what it means to me. Compliment peanut butter.
You complimented peanut butter. Okay.
Yeah. But no, I'd compliment
it
for
also
you too.
Works.
And for everyone in our audience, thank you. I'm grateful to all of you. And you guys are all looking stunning today on this Friday.
Yeah, get out there and have a great day knowing that you're awesome.
Yes. What's that old sketch from SNL? Like, I'm good enough.
I'm good. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough.
I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me.
Wait, who was that? Who did that?
It was Stuart Smalley. Jill, we got that part right, but it was not Martin Short. It was Al Franken.
Yes, that's right. Speaking of things people like, Moshe, I just want to thank everyone for filling out the survey about the podcast. We really appreciate a lot of the kind words and some of your feedback and constructive criticism, as we are always looking to improve this product. So thank you guys so much for taking time out of your busy days to let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, several thousand of you took that survey. You might not even remember it. It was back in December, but we have crunched the numbers. We had a meeting about it this week internally at Mo News, looking to figure out what we should be doing in 2025, what should we be doing more of, less of. So thank you for the helpful feedback, and more headlines, internal headlines from Mo News set to come here in the coming weeks based on what you told us.
All right, with that, let's get to some news on this Friday morning, starting with politics in the courts. A judge has already ruled Donald Trump's order to restrict birthright citizenship blatantly unconstitutional. We'll take you through what will be a long legal fight here.
Yeah, this is not the end of it. It's more like the end of the beginning.
It comes as the president has started to crack down on illegal immigration. We're going to take a look at some of the numbers from the early federal raids. And Congress passed the Laken Riley Act with a number of Democrats joining Republicans to crack down on people here illegally who commit crimes. Meanwhile, Moshe's favorite story, we could soon get some more information on the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK, with Trump issuing an executive order to declassify some of those files. With Donald Trump issuing an executive order to declassify some of those files, Moshe, looking forward to you breaking down what we could actually learn here.
I'm borderline obsessed with these stories, Jill. What we still don't know after 50, 60 years since the assassinations, why this move is significant. A lot we still don't know, as a number of Americans still believe in various conspiracy theories related to the assassinations.
To California, where strong winds and dry conditions are driving new fires, this time in Bel Air and Brentwood. Back to D.C., 2 Republican senators oppose Pete Hegseth for defense secretary, what it means for his nomination.
Yeah, we're looking at a late night vote tonight, and we don't know. He could make it out by the skin of his teeth. Senators have told Vice President Vance, who would break a tie, not to go very far away.
And the Oscar noms are out, the movies and actors with the most nominations.
Jill, I feel like I've seen like one of them. I saw Wicked, but...
That's it. At least that's one more than I saw.
There's a lot to see between now and the Oscars.
And we're a couple of weeks from the Super Bowl, and we're learning about one of these special guests performing at the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar. And it's Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
You hear the crunching, Jill? I'm eating. I've already begun eating what I'm going to be eating this weekend.
Everyone loves that, Moshe. Everyone loves a podcast host who's chewing on the podcast, so keep it up.
We normally cut it out, but it worked for the purposes of this one.
Normally just I have to hear it. and you guys don't. Okay, let's start with a big legal ruling on one of Donald Trump's first moves in his second term. On Thursday, a federal judge temporarily blocked the president's executive order redefining birthright citizenship just days after he signed it. The judge called it blatantly unconstitutional. That came during the first hearing in a multi-state effort challenging the order. But the judge saying, not so quick. According to his reading of the Constitution, this case is one of 5 lawsuits being brought by 22 states and a number of immigrants' rights groups across the country. Arizona, Illinois, Oregon, and Washington were the first to get the hearing before a judge. But this decision applies nationally. The judge, by the way, U.S. District Judge John Cooner, oversaw the case. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan. He grilled the DOJ attorneys, saying that the order boggles the mind and is the most unconstitutional order he has seen in 40 years. Moshe, in a lot of other ways, Donald Trump in this second term came in ready to go, with executive orders ready, basically knowing exactly what he wanted to do. This one is surprising in some ways that none of the lawyers on his team or the legal experts caught it, or maybe they didn't care. Maybe they just said, it's never going to stand up to the courts, but we just want to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's more like the latter. I think he wanted to begin a conversation here when he was asked about it during the signing of all the various executive orders earlier in the week. Members of the media were like, are you serious with this one? Like, you think this will get through? And he's like, we'll see. We'll see if it gets through. He wants to begin this conversation. And I think I'm sure his legal team was like, yeah, it is very tough to somehow overturn the 14th Amendment of the Constitution with an executive order. You likely need legislation here or a constitutional amendment. Nonetheless, he wants to test it out, and he started on day one here. He's not waiting around. Now, as far as birthright citizenship is concerned, the U.S. is among about 30 countries with the principle of right of the soil, it's called. Most of the Americas, Canada, Mexico, among them, which is if you're born in a country, you're a citizen of that country. Now, the lawsuits here from the states, from the immigrant rights groups, argue that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, ratified back in the 1800s, guarantees citizenship for people born and naturalized in the U.S., regardless of their parents' standing. States have interpreted that. The courts have interpreted it that way for going back more than a century here. It was actually originally, the 14th Amendment was to ensure that all Black Americans post-slavery were considered citizens of this country, having been born here. The specific language is all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Key phrase here, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the U.S. and of the state wherein they reside. Now, Trump's order asserts that the children of non-citizens are not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. and orders federal agencies to not recognize citizenship for children who don't have at least one parent who is a citizen. Now, a key case here, as this goes up through the system, will be an 1898 birthright citizenship case. This was a Supreme Court case 130 or so years ago. It had to do with a man born in the U.S., Wong Kim Ark, who was born in San Francisco, to Chinese immigrants. He was a U.S. citizen because he was born in the country, but after a trip abroad, he was being denied re-entry by the federal government on the grounds that he wasn't a citizen under an act we had back then called the Chinese Exclusion Act. Nonetheless, the court found that, no, he is a citizen regardless of these laws that you pass. Now, key here is his parents were here legally. Now, what we haven't seen is the courts actually address the idea of being born here to someone who is here temporarily or here illegally. And so ultimately here, that's one of the tests that the Trump team and people around him want to pursue here is, will the Supreme Court take this up and will they try to draw a nuance here in the 14th Amendment and not just say hook, line, and sinker, it belongs to everyone, but draw a line here when it comes to parents' legal status. They'll have to go into the minds of those who drew up the 14th Amendment in 1868. There's also a chance the Supreme Court doesn't take this up if there's no debate among lower courts. If all the courts decide they go one direction, there is a likelihood the Supreme Court doesn't take it up here. Nonetheless, The conversation is happening. This is a short-term loss for Trump in this district court, right, being thrown out right away. But his hope is that he has better luck at the appellate level or even the Supreme Court level.
Also on the immigration front, we're tracking raids to arrest and deport people here illegally. 2 days after President Trump signed a slew of executive orders cracking down on immigration, we've yet to see any large-scale raid in any one place. We had mentioned originally Chicago was targeted for immigration raids. That hasn't really happened yet. So far, arrests by Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE officers appear to remain along the lines of routine operations. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, telling Fox News on Wednesday that ICE had conducted about 308 arrests across the country. Now, by comparison, in September of last year, which is the latest month that we have data, under then President Biden, ICE arrested about 282 migrants per day. So relatively similar numbers so far. We featured a Fox News report on our Instagram account where they accompanied an ICE team in Boston this week as they went into sanctuary jurisdictions and targeted what they called the worst of the worst criminal illegal immigrants. Among the targets arrested this week, an MS-13 member with an Interpol red notice for aggravated murder, another MS-13 gang member facing gun charges, and multiple rape and sexual assault suspects, several of whom had been released from sanctuary jurisdictions.
So the Trump administration says that initially deporting criminals will be a top priority. It was the same for the Biden administration. The key difference is that Trump, in addition to deporting criminals, if they find other folks who are not here legally, they're also arresting and deporting them. That's something the Biden administration didn't do. We also put up a bit of a 60 Minutes report from the fall, where they accompanied then ICE agents during the Biden administration, where they caught up with someone who had a criminal record. He was being driven around by someone else here illegally, who actually happened to be deported at least once, but they decided not to arrest that guy because they're just like, we're not going to fill ourselves with people who don't have criminal records, even if they're here illegally. Again, the distinction here for Trump is that he's going to go after all of them. But the issue they have is that the ICE budget right now, they're over budget. They need more facilities. They need more judges because once they arrest it, they got to go through, because once they arrest them, they got to go through hearings. They need judges to go through these hearings. They got to ensure that these people can then be deported by their home country. They'll be accepted by their home country. That could require a whole negotiation. And so there's going to be a lot here that we'll be watching. In particular, one of the differences, too, we were asked about this between Biden and Trump, since they both prioritize criminals, is that for the most part, the Biden administration was a little more deferential to these sanctuary cities and states. Sanctuary cities being places where they don't really cooperate with the feds. They offer a little more protection to people who are here illegally. The Trump team saying, we don't care if you're a sanctuary city, we will go after it. We will go after them. We will go after you. And ultimately here, just get on board the Trump deportation plan, regardless of your local or state policies. Trump is also, as I mentioned yesterday, lifting where raids can happen near schools and churches. So look out for that. Right now, ICE says there's about 650,000 folks here illegally with varying criminal histories whom they're monitoring but have not been detained yet. Some have very serious criminal charges. Some of those who you mentioned, Jill, that were taken in that one ICE raid in Boston earlier this week. Right now, ICE says that overall, they're monitoring 7 million individuals who aren't in ICE custody, about 10% of them with a criminal record. And so we will look out to see how and when they ramp up the promised deportations.
And staying with immigration here this week, the House and the Senate passed the Laken-Riley Act, one of the first bills President Trump is expected to sign since returning to the White House. It's named for a 22-year-old Georgia nursing school student who was murdered last year by an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. He had previously been cited for shoplifting by a Georgia police department, but ICE never took him into custody. So this legislation is aimed at clamping down on people who are in the U.S. illegally, who commit nonviolent crimes like theft. The House vote was 263 to 156, with 46 Democrats joining all Republicans in support of the measure.
Yeah, we see some bipartisan numbers there. Also over in the Senate, the vote was 64 to 35, 12 Democrats joining Republicans there, including a number of Democrats who are up for re-election in 2 years. Peters of Michigan, Ossoff of Georgia, Shaheen of New Hampshire, Warner of Virginia. Clearly, Democrats seeing the writing on the wall here when it comes to the politics of undocumented migrants and illegal immigration. A reminder, they tried to pass this last year through the Republican House, but then the Democratic Senate at the time didn't take it up. But the politics of this have changed.
Sticking with the news out of Washington, President Trump moved Thursday to declassify all remaining documents related to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. The order directs the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General to develop a plan within 15 days to declassify the remaining JFK records, and within 45 days for the other two cases. It wasn't clear when the records would actually be released. Trump gave the pen that he used to sign the executive order to RFK Jr., that's RFK's son and JFK's nephew. Trump has picked RFK Jr. as his health secretary. Notably, RFK Jr. has previously said that the CIA was behind his family members' assassinations. Trump promised on the campaign trail that he would release the classified intelligence and law enforcement files on that 1963 assassination of JFK. He did make similar promises during his first term and then did release some of the documents related to JFK's killing, but ultimately he faced a lot of pressure from the CIA and the FBI, and he wound up keeping a large chunk of the documents under wraps, citing ongoing national security concerns. At the time, he said the potential harm to U.S. national security, law enforcement, or foreign affairs is, quote, of such gravity that it outweighs the public interest in immediate disclosure. Joe Biden actually released some more, but he also followed the CIA and FBI guidance in holding back the remaining documents. Now, about 99% of the documents related to the JFK assassination have already been declassified and released. Again, Trump also promising to release the documents related to RFK and MLK's assassinations. Those men were killed just about 2 months apart in 1968. So, Moshe, what could we expect to learn here, given that, as I just said, 99% of the documents are already out?
Yeah, that's in regards to the JFK assassination. So a reminder here, JFK assassinated in the fall of 63. MLK and RFK assassinated a few months apart there in the early part of 68. Why is this a thing? Well, do you remember the Oliver Stone JFK movie back in 91? It created a lot of buzz, and it led Congress to pass a law saying, you know what, we got to get everything released. We're going to give 25 years for everything to be released, setting a deadline back in 92 for the year 2017. Hence why Trump had the opportunity to release everything by 2017, as is the law. But the FBI and CIA said even 60 years later, they're like, you know what? We don't want you releasing everything yet. And so he released some, but not all. Biden released some more, but not all. And so you're left with a couple thousand documents, some that you can see certain words, right? They're redacted, some that are completely redacted. And that's where we stand on the JFK story. Now, those who have studied this, and we had one expert, Jefferson Morley, he's a biographer of all of this over on the podcast, the Mo News Interview Podcast, a couple of years ago. And you can listen to that as episode 19 of the Mo News Interview Podcast if you're interested in diving deeper on this. And he said, listen, we don't expect anything earth-shattering from these documents. Like, they're not saving the one document that says the CIA gave the go-ahead to kill Kennedy. What we do expect is potentially more embarrassing documents about the fact that the CIA was actually tracking Lee Harvey Oswald, the Kennedy assassin. They were tracking him to Mexico. They knew what he was up to. And so really it's about embarrassment. Not that the government ordered the assassination of the President of the United States, but ultimately the government could have known what was going on. And in fact, there were people that were sort of tracking what's going on. And we've seen this in the aftermath of 9/11 too, right? That we were tracking one of the hijackers and other hijackers. We just didn't put two and two together. You have the potential here for something along those lines. Now, I should mention, JFK had no shortage of enemies. He, at the CIA, at the Pentagon, in a variety of places, they didn't like this guy. He didn't go to war with the Soviets over the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was a feeling that he was soft on communism, that he wasn't who they thought he was going to be. And so he had a lot of people who didn't want him to be reelected in 64 and didn't like him very much, and maybe didn't mind that he got assassinated. He also, by the way, had his brother at the time, RFK, who was Attorney General and decided to turn completely on the mafia, who sort of helped the Kennedys at times. So the mafia wasn't happy with him. The Cubans weren't happy with him. The Russians weren't happy with him. See, he had a whole slew of people who wouldn't mind him dead. And so that is among the things we could potentially learn in this last 1,000 or so documents that's left behind. Probably, again, bad optics for the government, a bad look, but not, at least we don't expect, to learn that suddenly the order came from inside to take him out, or there's a second shooter, or anything like that. So that's JFK.
So they're not going to name the second shooter.
There's no expectation that suddenly one of the documents that's left is like, oh, by the way, there totally was another dude on the grassy knoll and he worked for the CIA. Like, that is not expected here. Again, we could find out something totally shocking here, but the people who study this do not expect something completely shocking. Now, we have MLK and RFK next up here. A number of FBI documents have been declassified related to MLK through the years. And we should note, if you're not familiar with this story already, J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, hated Martin Luther King with a passion. He actually tapped all of his phone lines going back to the 1950s, and they were tracking MLK everywhere. The FBI was basically worried about him leading a revolution inside the U.S. with the civil rights movement and then afterwards. And so J. Edgar Hoover in particular was like, find me everything to take this guy down. It got to the point, and this has already been revealed, that the FBI sent a letter, an anonymous letter to MLK trying to get him to commit suicide, saying, we have all this stuff on you. Why? MLK, in his private life, it turns out, was a philanderer, engaged in a number of affairs. Apparently, according to the FBI, would engage in group sex and a number of activities like that. And so they tried to use that and say, we're going to reveal it to your wife. And they, in fact, did ultimately to try to get him to basically step down from the civil rights movement and, again, actually call for him to take his own life. So what could come out? More wiretaps, more embarrassing information about what the FBI was up to and what they were trying to get on MLK. And, of course, the reverse here, details about MLK. There is an allegation that apparently in one of these hotel room wiretaps, he witnessed a friend of his raping a woman and didn't do anything. In fact, apparently watched. Also, again, related to some of the sexual activities, et cetera, that MLK might have been involved in. So there could be some stuff in here also that we learn about MLK in these documents. Now, there is a separate law related to MLK records. That law doesn't state that everything has to be released till 2027. We're a couple years away from that. So it's unclear whether the Trump move here will move up that release. As far as the RFK assassination, I'm very curious, Jill, what's still left as classified. This hasn't really been the subject of much debate except for RFK Jr., who thinks, again, the government was involved in his dad's assassination. RFK was running for president. It was the summer of '68. He just won the California primary. He was shot in a hotel kitchen by a Palestinian man named Sirhan Sirhan. This is all on video. Sirhan Sirhan talked about it afterwards. He was very upset at RFK for his support for Israel, for wanting to send Israel more military aid, and that's why he shot and killed RFK, a presidential candidate at that point. Later on, Sirhan in prison, who, by the way, is still in prison to this day, he's like, I don't remember any of it, and I was set up. And so we'll see what comes of that. But that's the most straightforward of the cases when it comes to these three. But I'm looking forward. I mean, if this is serious here, he's going to reveal them. I can't wait to read them.
Time for the speed read from the LA Times. The Sepulveda fire in Bel Air and Brentwood was the latest in a nerve-wracking week as Southern California headed into a fifth consecutive day of red flag fire weather warnings. The alerts caution that conditions are ripe for fires to ignite and spread quickly. There have been red flag warnings in some part of Southern California for 14 of the last 17 days. The stretch started on January 7th, the day the Palisades and Eaton fires began their devastating spread, leveling parts of the Pacific Palisades and Altadena. The National Weather Service posting on social media, any new fires can grow fast and out of control. Have a plan, especially if you are in a high fire risk area. The Weather Service has extended its red flag fire weather warning through today at 10 a.m. for much of the counties of Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura.
Basically, most of Southern California. Now, good news. Rain is finally in the forecast for Southern California, starting as early as tomorrow afternoon, lasting until Monday night. There is a 10 to 20% chance of thunderstorms across the region, which, if they materialize, over recently burned areas could bring moments of heavy rainfall. So while good in putting out fires, it also potentially could result in debris flow and landslide risks. So no winning in Southern California these days, it feels like. Jill, you mentioned the Sepulveda fire. They were also continuing to fight the Hughes fire, which we've been telling you about. 10,000 acres burned. That is about 45 miles northwest of downtown LA. It's mainly rural areas, but ultimately you had about 50,000 people who were under evacuation orders or warnings, according to the LA County Sheriff. These relentless Santa Ana winds, so they've been trying to fight the Hughes fire there, again, hoping the rain actually happens and is able to mitigate the fires that are currently burning. Now, it doesn't kill the fire weather season and the drought-like conditions, but it will be helpful to the firefight.
We're on confirmation watch today in the U.S. Senate. From the Wall Street Journal, 2 centrist Republican senators came out in opposition of Pete Hegseth, President Trump's defense secretary pick, injecting some new drama into what was expected to be a nail-biter of a vote today. In a statement yesterday, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska said that Hegseth's nomination, quote, poses significant concerns that I cannot overlook. She pointed to worries about his character and his lack of experience running large organizations. She also took aim at his past opposition to women serving in combat roles in the military, saying that I cannot in good conscience support his nomination. And then Senator Susan Collins, Republican from Maine, also following with her own statement saying, quote, while I appreciate his courageous military service and his ongoing commitment to our service members and their families, I am concerned that he does not have the experience and perspective necessary to succeed in the job. So Republicans control the Senate 53-47. If all of the Democrats vote against Hegseth, he can't afford more than 3 no votes from Republicans. So that's 2.
Right.
So
Murkowski and Collins are 2. He can basically allow for 1 more Republican no vote and not anything more than that.
In a procedural vote Thursday to advance the pick, the Senate voted 51-49, with Collins and Murkowski joining the Democrats in opposition. But some Republicans who voted to advance the confirmation Thursday haven't committed to supporting Hegseth on a final passage today. Moshe, is there thinking here that Hegseth might actually not get through?
It's going to be very close. Now, they have these multiple votes in the Senate, so don't be confused. They did that procedural vote yesterday. That basically is the vote to have the vote. And so some Republicans are like, no, we want to have the vote. We're voting to have the vote. But I don't know how I'm going to vote on the final vote.
So this is the explanation for John Kerry's famous, I voted no before I voted yes.
Right, I voted for it before I voted against
yes,
it.
yeah.
The infamous 2004 thing that Bush mocked him for. He was referring to Senate procedure, which is I vote for the vote to happen, and then I voted against it, ultimately. So what matters here? Murkowski and Collins are a no. And there's a couple other Republicans we're looking at. Notably, Mitch McConnell, of all people, who's entering his give 0 Fs era as a senator, no longer leader. He's like, no love for Trump. Trump doesn't love him. He's going to do what Mitch is going to do, what Mitch is going to do. And so the rumor has it, Fox is reporting that McConnell is seriously considering voting no on Hegseth here. So what does that mean? That takes you to 50-50. Well, in the U.S. Senate, a 50-50 tie, the tiebreaker is the Vice President of the United States. They happen to have a ceremonial role as the President of the Senate. This is something Kamala Harris had to do. This is something other Vice Presidents had to do, which is break a tie. So they've actually told, hey, Vance, don't go anywhere on Friday. We might need you to break a tie if Mitch joins Collins and Murkowski to vote against Hegseth. But that's not all. There's a senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who's also very much studying the various Hegseth allegations. And Jill, what really moved folks or led to some concern here, given that we thought that he had made it through, was new reports out from his ex-sister-in-law, who was married to his brother. She put in an affidavit that she witnessed him multiple times passed out from drunkenness in a bathroom, that he was abusive to his second wife, his ex-wife, as well. And so those allegations, the newest allegations, are what's leading some senators to be like, are we sure this comes on top of other allegations? Remember, Hegseth's pushback was anonymous. They're anonymous. They're just trying to take me down. In this case, they're not anonymous. There are names attached. This is an FBI affidavit So this is significant here. Now, again, the bet is that he's going to make it through, but it could be very close. We'll see what happens here, in particular with Mitch McConnell and Tom Tillis from North Carolina.
By the way, we mentioned Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He was confirmed on Inauguration Day, with all Democrats also joining Republicans to vote to confirm him. And now CIA pick John Ratcliffe, also easily confirmed. That was a 74-25 vote.
Yeah, and we should know traditionally, if you look at defense secretaries, I posted this on Instagram, it's usually an overwhelming vote. I mean, some have had unanimous consent, like Don Rumsfeld and several others, including Trump's previous picks, Mattis among them, where you had, basically the whole Senate say yes. So it's very rare here to have such a controversial defense pick. They typically want to go someone with unanimous consent, given the importance of the role. But Trump has picked someone who's very controversial here, both in terms of a Hegseth experience or lack thereof, as far as critics are concerned, and also all the personal stuff related to alcoholism and treatment of his ex-wives.
From CNN, the nominations for the 97th Academy Awards were announced Thursday, and it was a big morning for Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and Wicked. The nominees were revealed after acknowledging the impact of the ongoing wildfires in Los Angeles by Academy leadership. Emilia Perez led with 13 nominations, followed by The Brutalist and Wicked with 10 each. That musical, Emilia Perez, made history by garnering 13 noms, a record for a non-English language film. The musical is about a Mexican drug cartel leader who undergoes gender-affirming surgery. And it actually made history twice. That's because star Carla Sofia Gascon became the first openly transgender performer to be nominated for an Oscar. Elliot Page was nominated in 2008 for Juno, but it was before coming out as trans. The Brutalist and Wicked got 10 nominations each, which is pretty amazing considering one is a 3.5-hour epic about an architect and the other is part one of a glitzy adaptation of a hit Broadway musical. The Brutalist, from director Brady Corbet, stars Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones as Hungarian refugees who come to the United States after World War II. The film won big at the Golden Globes, and it was recently embroiled in some controversy over its use of artificial intelligence.
So I think, like many of you, and you messaged me, I haven't seen most of these films. Wicked, definitely saw Wicked, really enjoyed Wicked. That will have the blockbuster audience vote, which could be translated into some awards recognition here. We'll see how much of an impact it has for other categories. Remember, Barbie, was the most watched film of last year and basically was shut out of most awards at the Oscars last year. So you have Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, John Chu, all nominated here. If Erivo wins, by the way, she becomes one of those rare EGOTs, meaning she will have won an Emmy, a Grammy, a Tony, and now adding the Oscar to that, the O in EGOT. Now, one reason to watch the Oscars, if you didn't see the films, Conan O'Brien is set to host. So that could be a fun watch. He always likes to give it to folks and doesn't fear offending folks. So the Oscars will be on March 2nd. So, Jill, you have about 6 weeks to watch a dozen or so films.
From USA Today, Kendrick Lamar is bringing a very special guest to the Super Bowl on February 9th. A new trailer for the halftime show released Thursday reveals that SZA will be joining Lamar. In the trailer, the rapper talks on the phone while standing on a football field and notes that he has been thinking about a guest performance.
So this is not a huge surprise, given that SZA and Lamar are actually set to go on a 19-city North American tour later this year. It kicks off in April. They've collaborated on a number of songs. And so that will be interesting to see. We'll see who else jumps in here. Remember, Lamar's performance will be the second time he's performed at a halftime show in the Super Bowl. A couple of years ago, he was part of that big Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige performance. Last year, when you had Usher, he was joined by Alicia Keys, Lil Jon, Ludacris, among others. So we'll look to see who else potentially could join Lamar here. We should note that's the halftime show. We will know by the end of this weekend who's in the game. The NFL season now down to 4 teams from 32. The NFC and AFC championships happen this weekend. You have the Washington Commanders, rare late season showing for the Washington football team. I know a lot of people are excited about that. They'll be facing the Philadelphia Eagles. And then over on the AFC side, less surprising, the Kansas City Chiefs are in it again. They're headed back to the AFC championship game for the 7th straight season, the second longest streak in NFL history. They'll be playing the Buffalo Bills. It'll mark the 4th time over the past 5 years that those two teams have met. I know a lot of Buffalo fans desperate to get through this year. But then, of course, on the other end, you have the Chiefs, who, if they make it to the Super Bowl, Jill, have a chance for a three-peat, their third straight Super Bowl victory. They would become the first team in NFL history to do that if they're able to get to the Super Bowl and win a third straight time. So those games, Sunday afternoon, look out for them. And then the Super Bowl in New Orleans on February 9th.
It is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating.
We should mention, thanks to Amazon Audible for sponsoring Cheers to the Freaking Weekend this weekend. Key to our Cheers to the Freaking Weekend is what we're reading. And via Amazon Audible, you can access hundreds of thousands of titles and listen to them, whether they're podcasts, special audio storytelling, and a whole bunch of books, a selection of Audible originals as well. With Audible Premium Plus, we have a special deal for you right now for the Mo News community. You can enjoy exclusive deals, discounts throughout the year. New subscribers can sign up for 1 month. Can sign up for a 1 month free trial of Audible Premium Plus. Head over to mo.news/audible. That is mo.news/audible to check out the award-winning storytelling, podcasts, books over there on Amazon. Audible Premium Plus. Again, mo.news/audible. All right, Jill, what are you watching this weekend?
So, Moshe, some of my friends told me about a show on Hulu called The Bold Type. It's been out for a while. It is a drama series inspired by the life of longtime magazine editor and executive Joanna Coles. She's an executive producer on the show. I am just looking for something light and fun, so I'm looking forward to binging that.
Joanna and I caught up at inauguration weekend. She was down there at one of the parties, had the pleasure of working with her briefly at CBS as she was consulting for CBS. She's over at The Beast now, The Daily Beast.
Moshe, what are you watching?
There's the aforementioned NFL games, the NFC and AFC championship games, but also coming out at the end of the weekend is 50 Years of SNL Music, hosted by Questlove. This will be streaming over on Peacock. They're also going to air it over on NBC. Literally, Questlove has watched every single SNL music performance going back 50 years. And so it traces back that history. Of course, it's the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live this year. So they're doing a lot around that.
Well, for my days as an NBC page, I can tell you that the SNL studio used to be the home of the NBC Orchestra, and it was built accordingly. So the acoustics are amazing. And one of the things that we used to say on the tour is that if you are a musician or a singer who does not sound good on SNL, you're just really not good, because the acoustics are set up to make you sound great.
Well, I look forward to learning more about that in the Peacock documentary. Jill, what are you reading this weekend?
Speaking of music, I'm reading an article in the New York Times called "Don't Look Now, but the Kids Boppers have graduated from college." Kids Bop 50 is here, marking the latest of the enduring brand's kid-friendly sanitization of pop music. Moshe, are you familiar with Kids Bop yet?
Not yet. Olivia's still 16 months old. Okay,
so it's basically pop music, but they changed some of the racier lyrics to be more kid-friendly. Brainchild of two lawyers. This is something that I learned. It's the brainchild of two lawyers. This is something that I learned in the article. One of whom said, we saw that there was a gap between music for tiny kids, so like Barney and all of that, and then pop music, which was not safe for 4 to 12-year-olds. So we thought it made sense to bring pop music to that group. Moshe, I went to a Kids Bop concert this past summer at Jones Beach. So learning the backstory is pretty interesting. And the way that they change the lyrics is pretty funny too. What are you reading?
Good. A new book by an old friend of mine, Juan Williams. You might know him from Fox News, from NPR, a variety of places. He has a new book called New Prize for These Eyes. It's a focus on the rise of the new civil rights movement, sort of civil rights 2 that happened in this century. And basically the progress it's made, some of the issues it's faced coming out of the Obama era, Black Lives Matter, etc.
Okay, Moshe, what are you eating?
You heard me crunching on it earlier. Joe, Alex went to Trader Joe's and got these sweet and salty, umami, crunchy rice crackers. Have you tried these?
No, I haven't. I'm always looking for something good from Trader Joe's.
It's like the old Pringles adage: once you pop, you can't stop. Like, I feel like I had to literally throw these across the room during this podcast because otherwise I was going to eat the entire bag. But anyway, the sweet and salty, umami, crunchy rice crackers from Trader Joe's. No sponsor of this podcast, but if you'd like to be, I will fully endorse you. All right, Jill, what are you eating?
It's soup season. Nothing I like more. So I am going to a restaurant here on Long Island. It's called Sweet Tomato. It's in Oyster Bay. And a friend of mine told me to get their soup flight, which is your choice of 3 soups, which I love because I love like a little sampler of stuff. So I'm very excited.
It's been a very soup-themed podcast this week between the soup candies that you...
the soup drops.
The soup drops. And then now you're going for soup this weekend. So hopefully that staves off the next virus as they make their way around.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Review us in the App Store.
Yes, the reviews matter on this National Compliment Day. Give us a compliment. Give us a 5-star review.
Yes, please.
Right? That's what we do on National Compliment Day. Head over to, especially the Apple podcast app. If you can leave us the review, leave us the 5-star, give us a compliment. We would be grateful to you.
And give someone else a compliment, too. It'll make them feel good. Compliments are free. Give them out.
Give it off to us. Give one to a stranger out there today. Okay? Someone not expecting it. Someone potentially at a store you're at. Someone sitting next to you. Your Uber driver. Someone this weekend. Give them a compliment. It'll go a long way. That's all she wrote, Jill.
All right, everyone. Have a great weekend.
See ya.